Atheists are often asked, who are you to question God? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'll tell you what gives me the right to do that. Unlike the Bible, I oppose sexism and believe in gender equality. Unlike the Bible, I oppose bigotry towards the LGBTQ community, and I advocate for their rights. Unlike the Bible, I oppose punishing innocent people and advocate for holding the guilty accountable. Unlike the Bible, I oppose blind faith and believe people should use logic and reason to understand the world around them. Unlike the Bible, I oppose slavery and have no problem saying it's wrong for people to own other people as property. If you think I'm wrong to question the Bible about these things, then please give us a call because the show is starting now. All right, welcome everybody. It is March 3rd, 2024. I am your host, JMike, and joining me, we did a show pretty recently, so once again, Mr. Jim Barrows. How you doing, Jim?
Not too bad. How you doing, JMike?
Sleepy, but once the show, if I ever like the sleepy days, the second the show starts, it's like, all right, I'm awake, I'm wired, let's go.
The adrenaline dumps in and you're ready to roll. Yeah.
So I have an hour and a half to 2 hours till that goes away, and then I'll crash. So it'll all be worth it. But this is my 2 hours.
Yeah,
of being
that's always
awake.
the fun part.
Yeah, exactly. And just want to remind you, the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. We do a question of the week at the beginning of every show, and we want to give you last week's results for the Share Your Experience question of the week. Last week, we asked you, name a time that God had no chill. And so the top three we get for this week, we have number 3 is Pat from Mania. Sky Daddy had no chill when he slapped the pieces off the board because he didn't like how they were playing without him. Nose Flood, LOL. Yes, of course. Number 2, we have Indra. I'll just say that, Indra. God had no chill when he got salty with Lot's wife. Classic. And number 1... Number 1, Blake Walker 5954. Name a time God had no chill. When he kept hardening Pharaoh's heart until he finally got to assassinate a bunch of children. I think Blake, I don't really want to weigh out what's worse when we talk about assassinating a bunch of children, but mine was 1 Samuel 15:3. So I don't know. I let people decide which one's more heinous. I don't think we should compare. Pretty bad either way you look at it. But I want to say I think he's got me beat. All right, but we do. We're going to do a new question of the week, and so please leave your comments below in the video, and we will put the top 3. The prompt for this week is complete the sentence. I was crucified and sent to hell, and all I got was blank. And so, Jim...
this very drippy dick.
This what?
Very drippy dick.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought I heard. I just wanted to make sure I heard it right.
Not enough caffeine. I don't have anything funnier.
It caught me off, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, some people don't expect the really crass out of me, and it's like, why?
If I wasn't awake...
For you, dude.
If I wasn't awake before, I'm now awake, Jim. That's for sure. All right. So we will play those for next week at the beginning of the show. But first, before we get to calls, we're stacking up some calls quick. I do want to go through a couple announcements, tidy up a little housekeeping. We now have a channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form. Visit tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. And there you can listen to the latest shows from the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, Nonprofits, and others. Also, you can send a super chat. We will read those after this first call. And we'll read as many as we can get to. I don't think we ever have really a problem. We think we get to every one of them. So send that, and we will be sure to read that for you. We also have new limited edition T-shirts. That's easy enough for me to say. Get yours before they are gone at the end of the month. We have I'm Going to Hell in Every Religion. I'll Save You a Spot. And we have Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll save you a spot. I was reading that twice. Get your purchase in before it goes away at the end of the month at tiny.cc/merch ACA. And we want to send a big thank. We're going to do it right away. Send a big thanks to the crew who puts on this show every week. We get them while they're fresh before they get sick of me and Jim, or maybe the caller's crap, and then they're ready to tune out. No, I'm just
Probably
kidding.
ours.
Just yeah. Yeah.
And don't forget, we've got
probably
Justin in the
dicks.
background who's also doing our email.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I was sending some emails this week. I went through. I was behind on some. There was one I missed from like 2022. So whoever that was, I apologize. I went back and I emailed it, and I really enjoyed. I had one from someone named Emma. I really appreciated the email there. Someone emailing about naturalism and stuff like that. So yeah, we do appreciate those interactions, and Justin and anybody else that takes care of a lot of that work for us. But let's go ahead and get to calls. We have a couple theists, so I guess we'll go to Mike in South Carolina. Says there will never be enough proof of God for most people because people don't want to admit there's something bigger than themselves out there. Mike, how you doing?
Hey, good. I repeat caller. I was saying that that's kind of the conclusion that I came to. I last time I spoke, Jim was one of the people on there, and he said, "Well, we're not even sure Jesus existed and all that, and why don't you check into it?" And I said I would. I mostly did, Jim. It was really tedious, but Bart, I checked into him. He's an atheist, and he had a debate with somebody else, and all truthfulness, I didn't watch the debate with Bart, but I did see Bart say, "Oh, I think there is enough evidence to say there is a Jesus," and what he said and all that. That's up for grabs, I guess. But he thought he existed. Jim didn't think Jesus existed. And I was just like, "Oh man, this is a lot of work." I came to the conclusion, no matter how much evidence I find, Jim will say, and others, "Is that all you got? That's unconvincing." And that's why I came up with this topic of no matter how much evidence you produce, you can't prove it.
Let me respond to that.
No, and it's like,
real quick, if you don't mind.
You're right. You don't know. You just get evidence.
Mike, real quick, I'm gonna let Jim respond to you on that.
Let me respond to that. Yes, there's a ton of evidence, and I'm not entirely sure whether or not there was or was not a Jesus. You certainly have, when you say you have a lot of evidence and you go quote the Gospels, that's difficult that's not good evidence because two of them are exact copies word for word for about 80% of them, right? And then the other two all base what they say on those two. So it's not four separate independent accounts. But you also have the real possibility that there was a Jesus Christ. The problem is, was he supernatural? And that's where it's kind of like, you need to show me that the supernatural exists before you can say Jesus Christ did anything supernatural. If you want to say he existed as a human being, I'm okay with that. I don't have any dog in that fight. But I do have an opinion on whether or not the supernatural exists. And based on the last 2,000 years, we have never seen a supernatural explanation supersede a natural explanation or stand against a natural explanation. So you have all of that evidence to overcome when you want to say something was supernatural. And if you want to say Jesus performed miracles like turning water into wine, now you have to show that he didn't do a very common magic trick to do that, because we know that's how you can do water into wine. You just use a trick pitcher. So when you say there's not enough evidence, there's enough evidence, I think, to say maybe there was a Jesus, someone that the legends are based on, but there's not enough evidence for the supernatural, much less Jesus Christ doing anything supernatural. I think the natural explanations and just simple stage magic explains more than the supernatural. Because like I said, 2,000 years, no supernatural explanation has stood. So does that...
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what you said last time. I appreciate that. Who are we to go back 2,000 years and see if a guy had a trick pitcher or not? We don't know. They say he healed people. A lot of people said it. You'll say, well, where are they now? They're all dead. Where are the writings? They don't have any. Maybe the crux
when it comes to healing people, I'll tell you, Benny Hill heals people on his TV show.
Yeah, I mean, and also like understanding the kind of what's going on in antiquity helps a lot. It'll, at least it was clear for me, it became more clear that when you have people trying to convince pagans, right, embellishing stories or talking about how great this figure isn't like blocked off from people making embellishments, people adding to the story, for people misrepresenting the story, hearing the story incorrectly. Right, there's just so much room for error for that to happen. And I would want to point out with the Jesus stuff, I don't know if it's super important. I think the supernatural stuff is, but people like Ehrman or Dr. Mark Goodacre, or I don't want to speak for these people, but who believe Jesus existed, but they're atheist or agnostic atheist or whatever. They don't look at the Bible off your shelf and go like, that guy existed. They use things like the criterion of dissimilarity for Jesus's sayings, or like the criterion of contextual credibility. We need to situate Jesus in his first century Palestinian context, right? All of those things. You get, when you squeeze that juice and you use those filters, very little of that Jesus in the text comes out. You get like an apocalyptic preacher, but you don't get a lot of the embellishments. And so that's, I think, an important thing to state. But I am kind of like more interested on the supernatural stuff, because I think we could all just either be mythicists or not be mythicists, and who cares kind of at the end of the day there. But like, why do you believe the supernatural is a thing? Like, what gives you reason to believe that? Because I want to know from your point of view, like why you've come to that conclusion, not what other people think.
Well, first of all, I can't prove it. And you guys got me thinking, you really can't prove anything. You just get evidence, and then you're saying the evidence shows this is more likely than less likely. That's the way
yeah, Mike, let me cut you off there. I'm so happy with that. I'm not asking anybody to give me a deductive proof. I don't think that people are going to give that. I don't think people are going to give that for their existence. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm asking, I just care about the reasons that we have that give us good credence to think the proposition is true, right? That's the thing I'm the most interested in. So I'm not asking you to prove it to me. I'm asking, what are those things that when you look at it, you go, yeah, that counts in favor. That raises the probability of the proposition, God or supernatural, whatever exists. Like, what is that for you? Or do you have that?
Yeah, I mean, all the miracles and healing people, it's like, well, that's hard to prove. They have witnesses and da-da-da, but that's tough. The good one to go with is, Jesus died and they never got his body. And they're Roman guards that were in charge of him. And, they on their lives, nobody was going to interfere as far as stealing the body. And the body's never been produced. That's kind of a big deal. I think Cameron came up with a movie back in 2008. And he says, here's been a burial tomb with Jesus, Jesus, brother of St. John, and went on, did a whole movie on it. And then people dug into it and they're like, holy cow, no.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about the movie with Gary Habermas. You're talking about, I think you're talking about the movie with Gary Habermas, I can't remember the title of it.
Yeah, so if you got
the case for Christ, right? Or
that'd be good stuff,
Lee Strobel, whatever.
Right here. Yeah.
So when you look at the Gospels and you go from Mark to John, does Mark have a resurrection story in Mark?
Man, Jim, I know that the Gospels have different viewpoints. I also understand that they're not contradictory when they'll say one woman came, two women came back from seeing him.
Well, hold on, Mike. He's just asking you. He's just asking you a question about the. He's just asking you a question about.
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I don't know.
You go from in the order they were written is Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, if I remember correctly. I know it's Mark and Matthew.
Yeah, that's right.
Two look around.
Yeah, that's right.
But you have in Mark a basic story that basically ends very abruptly, not a lot of anything about the resurrection. And then you go to more stuff about the resurrection. And so you could make a case, and I'm not claiming this is true, but you could make this case that Matthew looked at the objections to Mark and wrote his story and added in a tomb and all the rest of this. And then you add in Roman guards, and then you add in this. And so what you end up with is kind of a set of responses to counter apologetics or objections to the story as things evolve, right?
Or things
and
that the
we know
author
that's
doesn't
how
like.
Stories work.
Yeah, or the things that Matthew didn't like, right? Like,
Right.
oh, he doesn't have these appearances or whatever. Mind you, 93% of Mark is in Matthew. It's very clear as
Yes.
day that he was using Mark. 93% of it is.
That show,
Word for word.
I mean, isn't that a
Word for word.
Be like, oh, they're basically telling the same story, a little different viewpoint. But if they get too far off, different from each other, then it's a bad thing. Now, it's like you can't win on this. It's like they should be similar, but not.
Well, no, I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
And
And I'm not saying they should be identical.
That would be problematic, I think, if we saw that they were just we should discard them out of hand if they're independent, but clearly they're not independent in that case, right?
Right.
Yeah,
And
but different details.
So I'm not saying they're wrong, and I'm not saying it didn't happen and we just have 4 different viewpoints. But when you look at the order in which we have them, and the order that we know they were written from the documents we have, maybe they were earlier, it really seems to me to be more a set of how do we overcome this objection to this story? And so how do we know he wasn't thrown in a common grave or an open grave like so many criminals were? Oh, Joseph of Arimathea gave him a tomb. Okay. Well, how do we know that the disciples didn't steal the body? Oh, there were Roman guards. You see what I'm saying? Right?
Yeah, and which is problematic because Roman guards were stationed like not really in the city. They were given like a bodyguard, and then they were stationed like outskirt. I'm not a history buff, so someone correct me if I'm wrong here. But from what I've read in the scholarship, you don't get these like Roman guards that are just like at every corner, like it's kind of depicted in Jesus movies, right? Or like the Pharisees are like right around the corner waiting to just say something. It wasn't like that really at all, and it's very unlikely that you get Roman guards there. And it just goes against like having someone like Joseph of Arimathea being given like privileged rights for the body goes against everything that we know in antiquity. And so what I do to assess it is when I look at this is like, okay, these are the claims, but let's look at antiquity. We have to use an abductive form of reasoning. So we have to use inference to the best explanation, which can change in an archaeological dig tomorrow. It could flip it on its head. And I look at that and I go, wow, all these things that are being additions later from Mark, those things don't line up when you actually look at what you would expect in first century Palestine. They actually are like antithetical to what you would expect. And that's a problem, right? But I don't know, Mike, what are you thinking?
I think that's interesting. What you brought up is like, oh, well, this one was written first, and then they're like, oop, got to fill in the gaps. And second one, I mean, that's I see what you're saying. I don't know. I thought Jesus was a big deal and a big problem, and they're like, we're going to handle this. We're going to put Roman guards on. We're going to do this. And if they didn't mention the first one, it didn't mean it didn't happen. But he was like notorious, is what he was. And the Romans were like, we're going to squelch this. We're going to have people there. It wouldn't make any sense not to. And if it wasn't meant, that would.
Mike, I'm sorry to cut you off, but it sounds like I hope, because I've enjoyed, like, you don't sound like you're trying to be difficult, but it sounds like you have the content of the book and that's enough for you. Whereas like me and Jim, we see the content of the book and then we go, okay, well, what is what is like archaeological digs or anthropological studies about humans or whatever in the past? What do those have to say? Like, what's the reading, like the literacy rate, around that time? And then we look at it and we're like, okay, well, the gospel writers clearly weren't the disciples, right? That 90% couldn't read or write, let alone write a literary text or whatever. But it sounds like you're just okay with what the content presents itself.
Everybody had scribes. I'm sorry, I thought everybody had scribes. If you want to write something down, you could. A lot of people couldn't read. Scribes were.
We have zero cases of scribes in antiquity writing down for someone that would be like a fisherman or like a tax collector from Aramaic to Greek. None of those exist.
They were
not even any
highly
other language.
skilled. Yeah, they're highly skilled knowledge workers. They're the equivalent of software engineers today, or lawyers, or anybody else. They were very well paid. So most of the time, your fishermen aren't going to be able to afford a scribe.
And someone like Matthew just needs to collect money. He doesn't need to know how to read in Greek. Sorry, Mike, I cut you off.
Because that guy had money. You know, I mean, this is just something you would do. I don't like going to lawyers, but every once in a while you need a lawyer. They're really expensive, and you do it. You know, I don't.
Yes, if you can afford one.
Giant obstacle where fishermen, they'll never get a scribe. They can't afford that. They would find a way for something important like this and pieces of paper, etc. That's what I see. Can I ask you a question, guys? Something.
Sure.
All right. You know, as far as getting evidence and doing all that, what if, you've probably been asked this before, but what if there was enough evidence? There is a God, you're standing in front of him, you actually believe it's him, not a vision, you're not in the matrix. Somehow
well, then we would believe
God is not. But
I would,
God was evil.
I would believe he exists just like I believe you exist.
Exactly.
If he said, I'm God, would you follow me if he was evil? Would you? He was.
No.
You know, he's like.
I wouldn't follow him.
Like, I'm in charge. What do you?
I'd just be like, hey man, I'm cool doing my own thing here. I got it covered. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I would too. And he'd torch you. It'd be bad. But the other scenario, there's one in between. But the other scenario is, okay, you're convinced this actually is God, and he's like, I'm really good. My ways are above your ways. You won't even understand some of my ways. I built this whole universe. This is my dojo. Would you?
So here's the problem with what you just said, right? Well, let me clarify something real quick. Are you assuming an omnipotent God?
Yeah.
So when that God says, I can't explain my ways to you, is that a statement an omnipotent God could make logically?
Oh, geez. I don't want to get into logic queries. Actually, the fact that you can't understand it is not his fault. So, yeah. I mean, you're right.
Yes, it is. It absolutely 100% is. Well, because if you can't explain it, you don't know it, right? If I can't explain it, I don't know it. I don't have the power to explain it because I don't know it. So either your God is not omnipotent or he's not omniscient, because he either has the power to explain or he has the knowledge to explain. Either way, he should be able to explain it.
I defer to you. You win that point. The question was, his ways are above your ways. Let's say you can understand them, but they're all good. I was using a Bible verse, and his ways are above our ways. But he's all good all the time. But you got to follow his rules. What would you do? Would you do your own thing?
Well, I'm not. I mean, no offense, Mike. I don't really know what this thought experiment does for me. Like, if God exists, then sure. If it could explain itself to me, it was like, hey, I'm all good, but I wasn't powerful enough to stop all this evil, whatever, right? It could give some explanation to me. I'd have to see what happens, right, from that type of interaction. I don't think it's to me, this is kind of like what if the stars put itself in a way that everyone could read. It says, Jesus died for your sins or whatever, Jesus saves, and we could all read it. Okay, then I'd believe in probably Christianity, or raise the probability of Christianity probably. But I don't think that I live in a world like that, right? Like I don't these kind of hypotheticals are interesting, but as a naturalist who thinks gods don't exist, I don't think I live in that world. So it's like strange to entertain it. It's almost like, well, if you I want to be careful of certain IPs maybe, but think of a movie that you like. If you went to this, place they all hang out at this movie, would you be there hanging out, with those people in that movie? Yeah, I would be. It'd just be kind of trivial. But I don't think I live in a world where I'm inside of a movie, right? So, and that's kind of how I see Christianity.
And it also depends on what God you're talking about. If you're talking about the God of the Bible, I would probably want to see him tried for crimes against humanity. If you're talking about the omni-God, then I'm going to assume he's lying, because the omni-God makes no logical sense. You cannot have an omnibenevolent God who's omniscient and omnipotent in a world, in this world, the way it exists today. Because you can look at human crimes, just crimes against other humans, right? Why does most of that exist? Because poverty exists. Why does poverty exist? Because not everybody can eat. And I'm way oversimplifying here, right? But God could very easily have made it such a way that we humans don't need to eat. He could have taken a whole set of things that cause strife out just by making us photosynthesis or something else, some other way of not having to eat. There's a lot of ways he could have done these things where he could have made good the default or good easier than he has. Because when you force somebody to choose between doing the right thing and starving and doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing and eating, I think most of us are going to eat, right? Very few of us are going to be able to do the good thing and starve to death. So the God you're proposing, that omni-God, doesn't seem to exist with the world as it exists today. He just can't. It's just logically impossible, which is why I asked you, and you surrendered on this on the question of, can a God say, an omnipotent God say, my ways are not understandable? And I don't think that makes the case with an omnipotent, omniscient God. These are both logical problems with what he said. If you're talking about the God of the Bible, like I said, he needs to be brought up on crimes against humanity because he's worse than Hitler. If you're talking about some other God, let's discuss the qualities and we can go from there.
May I answer the crimes against humanity question?
Yeah, and then we're gonna move on to some other callers. We're getting some stacked up. Yeah.
The answer to that is, if you make something like a sandcastle and somebody comes by and smashes it, that's wrong. If you make a sandcastle and you decide to smash it, it's not right or wrong. It's yours, and you're not going to like this. He made us. When we kill each other, it's murder.
No, here's the problem with what you're saying. I am a sentient being. I have a right to life.
It's hard to take.
I have a right to my own mind. And it doesn't matter who made me. My parents do not have the right to kill me. Your God doesn't either. We're not sandcastles. We're not bubble gum. We're none of those things that you Christians like to say that are inanimate objects. We're human beings and we're sentient. And that's a huge difference.
We don't have a right to mess with each other. He can do whatever he wants. And by the way, nobody ever dies. You just change location. You're not dead. It's like a video game.
Oh man.
Now you got more things to prove.
We were having
right? You're just stacking. You're now stacking more claims.
You got to go on. It's hard to say. I don't like it. I didn't make myself, though. You didn't. Your parents didn't. This is really hard. Ouch. I don't like it. It's hard on the ego.
You don't like what? That you think that some God has the right to kill you because he claims he made us? Nah. That's not hard. Then you just completely reject that.
Make you, he does. He owns you. He does. It's hard to take.
No.
I don't like it.
No, because we're sentient beings, and deny that sentience is a problem. We're going to have the same thing when we create sentient AIs. We're going to have the same conversation that we can kill our own AIs, our sentient AIs. And what we have right now is not AI. AI is now a marketing term. It's meaningless. But sentient AI, when we do that, we're going to have this conversation again, and we're still not going to have the right to kill a sentient AI. Sentience is the key.
Yeah, it also, Mike, it doesn't follow from the fact either that because God is the creator, that therefore you ought obey him, or therefore you ought listen or ought to do anything. And that's just to fallaciously derive an ought from an is, right? Like the fact that you like, well, God is powerful, or God is the creator, or God has the biggest stick. The normative claim, the claim about oughts and what you should do, doesn't follow. If we put that like in an argument, it would be an invalid argument. The conclusion doesn't follow. It doesn't follow that because God exists that I ought not obey him, and it doesn't follow that if God exists that I ought to obey him. Those ought statements, those normative statements, just don't follow. It'd be kind of like saying, like, you know, premise 1, philosophers do philosophy. Premise 3, I don't know, or premise 2, Joe is a philosopher. Conclusion, cats are cuddly. Right, the conclusion just comes out of nowhere. It's just a category mistake. So I'm going to move on to other callers because yeah, if you, sorry.
You're right. You don't have to obey God. You don't have to. We have free will. We don't have to.
Well, it's not of that. It's just, I'm just saying it just doesn't logically follow. Like it's an invalid argument to say God is the creator, therefore you ought not engage in homosexual activity. That ought statement doesn't follow. The same way that if I said JMike smokes cigarettes, first premise, smoking cigarettes cause cancer, conclusion, therefore JMike, I don't smoke cigarettes, but conclusion, therefore JMike ought not smoke cigarettes. That doesn't follow, right? It wouldn't follow if I said, therefore I ought smoke cigarettes. Both those two premises are descriptive claims, and then the conclusion is a normative or a prescriptive claim. It doesn't follow. You have a gap there. So it's not about my willingness or something. It just doesn't follow, right? It just doesn't follow that I would have to obey such a being. But we appreciate your time, Mike. I'm going to try to move on to other callers. We spent a little bit more time on that one than I was expecting. But first, before we do that, I want to read a couple super chats. We got Gayest Husky gave us $4.99. Thank you again. You're always supporting. We appreciate that. Thus saith the Lord, it's not the size of the boat, but the motion of the ocean when you have the lotion. Wow. Never thought I'd ever say that on a YouTube channel in my life. Yeah. But there we go. Gaius Husky got it out of me. I almost said we got one from Armin, but no, that's not Armin. We got one from.
Yeah, sometimes the text is a little small there.
Yeah. And then I read his personal question out loud to everybody. We got Isaiah S. $5. Be wary of fighting apologetics, lest you become apologetic. And if you look at the trees also look at you. Thank you so much, Isaiah. People have some. We had one last week. It was funny. It was like, if Jesus evolved from the Virgin Mary, why are there still virgins named Mary? Thought that was pretty funny.
That is kind of funny.
Yeah. So thank you so much. We got Nero the Fairy Queen gifted 2 Atheist Experience memberships. Thank you so much for that. I'm seeing more and more people do that. So if you got one of those, go thank Nero the Fairy Queen for that. And we got Dark Wolfie. I think it's Dark Wolf Games. I can't tell if there's. My eyes are terrible, so sorry, Dark Wolf, if there's an eye in there I can't read. $10. I would be more likely have a heart attack if I turned in and everyone had converted to a less hair-filled cranium. Love the show. Keep doing what you are doing. Thank you so much. And Dark Wolf Games again for $10. Oh, that's the same one. I'm sorry, it repeated twice. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to some callers. We got James in Michigan. Says that signs of life on other planets aids their belief in God. How you doing, James?
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
I'm good.
Yeah, do you want to elucidate on that a little bit?
Yeah, pretty much my argument is basically just it's been through the years that there's been findings on other planets, specifically Mars, of life that once did live there.
I'm sorry.
And how does that prove God?
Yeah, I'm not really.
There was I think it was like an ancient city. They mapped out the pyramids, and there was a road that ran straight through the heart of Mars somewhere. I don't know the coordinates, but
Why do you believe any of this?
It's some sort of, what's that?
Why do you believe any of this?
Why do I believe any of this?
Yeah, I don't get it.
Research. I believe it because
Research.
researched it. Just like how
Okay.
is skeptical of Jesus' existence. I mean, it's research. Same thing.
Right. And what research leads you to believe that there was a city on Mars?
What research? Different documents, different videos.
What documents?
I don't know. Actually,
If there were signs of a city on Mars, why didn't we drop the Mars rover on it?
I don't know.
Because, I mean, that would have been a really cool place to drop a rover.
And I think there might have been when NASA went up there. I think there is.
You think?
I mean, you got
No.
you got to dig. I mean, internet's a big place.
Yeah, but
James,
if you're saying we can see it, right? Mars is the first thing we've ever sent. So if you have to dig to see it, how do you know it exists?
I mean, sift through the information. I mean, obviously NASA or who, they're not going to just blur out and say, "Oh, we found this or we found that." I mean, it's all.
You trust
Have
the
you ever
documents
talked
that
to somebody who's worked on the Mars rover project or anything from NASA? And have you ever asked them a question and then tried to get them to shut up about the answer?
No.
I have, because I know someone who works on some of the Mars rover projects over at ASU. He's not directly involved, but he does know quite a few of the people. And yeah, no, you can't get them to shut up. You ask any scientist about their field, and the biggest danger is that they will talk your ear off,
you won't be able to
almost
leave.
literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, they won't shut up. So when you start claiming secrecy, I'm kind of going, you obviously have never talked to a scientist who they're not just doing their job, they're doing their hobby, they're doing their life's work, they're doing something they're incredibly passionate about. So how do you get them to shut up about something like a city?
Well, obviously you have chains of command. You have hierarchies that you have to pass on the information. I mean, the hierarchies are not.
I'm sorry, are we living in 2024 with social media, news outlets, YouTube channel, TikTok?
Yeah.
How do you keep this stuff secret in 2024 with people who aren't in the military and don't have to worry about the Secrecy Act or anything along those lines, right?
That's my point exactly. It's not a secret anymore.
Yeah, and stuff still gets out, right? Even from the military, stuff still gets out. That's how we know about Abu Ghraib.
Oh.
Abu Ghraib was a leak on social media, if I remember correctly. I mean, this is the problem with what you're saying. You're saying that there's a city on Mars, and we can Google that. We can find out, no, there isn't. You say you documents. What documents? Where are these documents? Right? You're giving me absolutely no good reason to believe you.
Yeah, what is your source, James?
Remote viewer Joe McMoneagle, CIA.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
remote viewing is garbage.
That's
Are you
bullshit.
serious? Are you serious right now?
Absolute garbage.
You realize
thanks
in
so
those
much,
you realize in those CIA documents, which I've looked at, if you look at the conclusions, they have, it's like overwhelmingly just like not effective is what the conclusions were. Right? Like I was weirded out because when I first got on TikTok, there was all these spiritualists like talking about this Project Blue Beam and all this stuff, like why am I losing MK Ultra, right? All this stuff, and the CIA documents were just like everybody was just like, yeah, I'm reading through them, and all the commenters on there were just like, yeah, I read through them, and it's crazy. People are sheep. Wake up. Like pulled it up on my computer, look at it, and it's like the conclusions are like yeah, we have no good results for like remote viewing. It's not an effective weapon or in any sense. And the project disbanded because of it. So I don't know what you're going on about that. But every time I've looked into this stuff that like, which is like the camp I kind of came from, and I go look at the stuff you guys are saying, it's just like an empty wasteland. There's nothing there. The stuff I was promised when I go back to look is just never there, ever. It's always like, oh, you didn't know how to read.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, it's I mean, the PDF, the gateway process, it's on PDF. Just Google it. You could download the PDF. It's a difference of 4 frequencies from the left and right ear. It syncs your brain. And basically, what that does, that syncs.
And we're done with that call. Moving on. All right. We're gonna go to Kites in Georgia. I had a recent experience that leads me to believe that God is real. Are you going to talk about like MK Ultra and like, do I have to like go like auditing like certain celebrities have to do to take these fake aliens off me and get e-readers for like Scientology, or are we going to have a normal conversation?
JMike, I think you're a little bit salty from the last call.
Like that.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm a little salty. Let me give Kites the fair stretch here. So, how you doing? You wanted to talk about a recent experience that leads you to believe God is real. You want to tell us what that experience was?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, just go ahead with what you wanted to call in about.
Okay, so recently I had learned that one of my childhood friends had passed, right? And one of the last things he gave me was this onk chain, right? Key to life thing, right? And he passed in August, right? So basically the way I found out was through his cousin about a few months later. So after his cousin had told me, I went back into my notes and my dream journals and whatnot, and it was so strange. Like I went back to my notes and I saw that he had. I'm sorry, I'm just overthrown with like emotion right now. But basically, in my dream, I sound so stupid right now. I had this dream that I was in like this white GT, right? And I go on his TikTok page, right? And his profile picture is him in this white GT. And, he died in a car crash, right? He wasn't a saint. He was going like 200 on the freeway, speeding away from the cops, and he had passed. But he was a good guy, and he was a good brother to me, right? Even just him giving me that piece of jewelry that he gave me. And that's not the only weird thing. It's also that I took a picture of the onk chain the same week he had died. Also I had the dream the same week he had died too. So I took the picture of the onk, right? And I was just reminiscing on the fact that he had gave it to me, and I just find it so strange that I had the dream of me in that GT, in that white GT, and his profile picture on his social media accounts is him in a white GT. And like, I don't use social media like that. He wasn't, like I said, he wasn't a saint or anything.
So let me just recap real quick, because let me recap. Yeah. A friend gave you an onk. A few weeks later, he died. On the day he died, you wrote in your dream journal that you had a dream of yourself in a white GT and him in a white GT. And it was only a few weeks later that you realized that that was in your dream journal, and that you found out that your friend had died. Is that correct?
No. In the same week, I had the dream that he had passed. No, I didn't have the dream that he had passed. I had the dream that I was in a white GT, like fighting off demons and whatnot, right? I just wrote it down in my dream journal, and I also took a picture of the onk that he had gave me, and I just wrote it in my notes, just thinking about him and whatnot, right? Just reminiscing. And then a few months later, I had learned that he had passed, and I just found it so weird that, that those two incidents happened, and I didn't even know that he had passed.
What's weird about them? You had a friend. You probably picked up his onk and started thinking about him. You reminisced about him. It's coincidental that it was on the same day he died. What's causal about this? What makes you think there's anything supernatural?
I just believe that the universe in a way, was trying to tell me that I needed to talk to him in a way. And this isn't the first time that something strange has happened to me like this. This is just the first time I've.
You know that most people, when they have a friend who dies and they find out after the death, often feel like they should have talked to that person more. That's not unusual.
Just to have that dream, that don't you think it's a little bit strange though?
No, people have dreams. And you want to put meaning into it, that's fine. But there's no reason to. You have a dream.
Maybe so, but I just can't shake the feeling.
You haven't connected the events in any way that makes any sense. Right? You just taken several events out of your life. You're sad about your friend dying and not being in contact with him as much as you might have liked and feeling guilt over it. And then you're assigning some supernatural thing to it. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well,
I'm not.
Okay.
I said I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. I'm with Jim. I'm not really. I apologize for any of this experience. It sounds like anything that would be traumatizing for a lot of for myself or Jim or anybody. But I have a hard time understanding the chain of reasoning that gets you to God existing. One thing I'm not really seeing how they connect, but if I tried to piece that together, I don't see the incompatibility of God not existing and there being, this is not something I believe, but I just don't think it follows to the conclusion that God exists, even with that data, even if you had there were these signs and it's from another realm or something. There are plenty of atheists that think that there are souls and spirits and stuff. I'm not one of those people, but it wouldn't follow to theism. To me, there's still this other really weird, strange camp of atheism. It's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons atheism camp that it could follow to, right? So I don't really understand the chain of reasoning, and I don't understand even if I tried to compact it as best as I can, how it would follow to theism.
I wouldn't necessarily call myself a theist. It's just when I signed up for the call and whatnot, I was only given two options: atheist or theist. So I just picked theist. Personally, I believe that this world is a lot more complex than we give it credit for. And I believe things are a lot more connected in ways that we can't really explain. I don't think it's possible to scientifically prove God, but I know that if you just give it a little bit more time, he might come back in a way. I just feel like
You think God would come back? That would indicate that you believe in the Christian God and that Jesus Christ was one and he died and rose again, right? That would make you a theist, right?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I believe Jesus was real. I can't say for sure if he really performed miracles like a lot of people believe he does. Believe he did, but I don't really care if he didn't turn water into wine. Jesus has helped so many people worldwide. He's helped people before I was born, and he'll continue to help billions of people after I'm dead.
How?
In a way.
How?
I believe that it's important for people to believe in Jesus Christ.
So, answer the question: how has he helped millions of people around the world?
He's helped them. Say if you're a child and you're abused and whatnot, and the only thing that you have is this community of individuals that are promoting positivity. And if you don't have that, what else? How else would you want?
What good is positivity when you're starving? What good is positivity when you're starving? Wouldn't food be better? If your God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent, then why are there starving kids?
Well, if they believe in heaven and whatnot, right? That is, I've heard this argument so much, but if God is real.
But you haven't answered it. If you've heard it so much, by the time I've heard an argument for 3 times, I usually have a counter argument or reasons why the argument doesn't make it. So what's wrong with this? If your God is omnibenevolent, omnipotent and omniscient, why are there starving children?
I never said that was my God, and I'll be honest. I'm not the best. I'm not as a good debater as you are, right?
Then describe your God.
If you just listen to my reasoning and whatnot, I think you would come to understand my stance. Right?
I haven't seen any reasoning from you yet. So let's start with your definition of God. How do you define God? You said he's not the omni-God. So what kind of God is he?
Well, I'm not sure if God is he, a she, a it, or whatever it may be, but I believe that it exists and it can.
Based on what?
I'll just say he in a way that, because it's a simple pronoun, right? Just say he. So I believe that he can intersect in our world. I believe that he is here and he is part of each and every one of us. Whether
he can't intersect with the world, but he is
so
here. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I agree with JMike. I don't know what that means, but how is he a part of all of us?
How is he a part of all of us? Well, don't you think it's just so amazing that we're even able to conversate right now? The fact that they're,
So you're amazed. Let me make sure I'm not misquoting you here. You're amazed we're having a conversation, therefore God.
Not necessarily, okay? I don't want you to just like.
You just said that.
What?
How did I misquote you?
You're saying the ability to have these conversations is like miraculous. It's crazy. It's insane, right? But yeah, I mean, we think a lot of scientific discoveries or what have you are amazing and wonderful and blows the mind, but I don't know that I've ever gotten like, oh, there needs to be more. Like, I don't see how that follows.
I mean, in my mind, like the universe is almost like an infant compared to its total lifespan, or at least what we believe its total lifespan would be, right? And the fact that we even have this sliver of just understanding speaks volumes to me, right? And I believe we shouldn't.
So because you don't understand how we can understand things, therefore God?
You say that again, please?
Because you don't understand how we understand things, therefore God.
Because I don't understand how we understand things. Not necessarily.
You don't understand things, so therefore God.
Well, it's a lot of things we as a collective don't understand about this world. And
yeah, that would just be an argument from ignorance, though, or incredulity if you just are like, I can't imagine it being like naturalism being true. So God, right? The types of reasoning that you're engaging with is fallacious.
In my eyes, I feel like we as individuals, like we have comparatively like the power of God in our hands right now, compared to all the.
I cannot cause
the kings
every starving child in the world to have food. I don't have that power. How am I a God?
Well, if Christians do believe in heaven, then maybe God is saving those children by. Yeah, I know it's not.
Yeah. Okay. So you're not going to answer the question. Here's the bottom line. If I had the power to feed every starving child in the world at the snap of my fingers, I would be an immoral monster not to do that. Right?
Well, in a way, yes, you would be immoral.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Do you think your God has the power to do that? Do you think your God has the power to feed every saving child at the snap of his fingers?
I believe so, but maybe there are consequences.
Then he's an immoral monster, right? You just agreed to that. You just agreed I would be. Why isn't your God an immoral monster?
But in the same way, though, don't you? If we were able to truly just pray and wish for everything that we ever wanted, and God would give it to us, or even just
Yeah, but
That's not
but
even
then,
dealing with the scenario I set up. I'm specifically talking about feeding starving children.
yeah, and like even if you went to that route and you said it's because all your, I harp on this so much. When people want the alternative, they're like, yeah, but look, it's better that we have these trials and tribulations so that we have this good. You're thanking the grenade thrower in order for you to have a hero that jumps on top of it. Like, but we wouldn't have heroes if there weren't people that threw the grenade, right? That's what you're thinking. And so the alternative there, if that's what you want, like, I mean, your alternative is like snap your fingers and everybody's fed, or no, the starving babies learn lessons. So that's a better world where they actually starve because, some people learn lessons. Billions die, but some people learn a very valuable lesson, like it's the end of a sitcom or something. So
I definitely do.
Yeah, and I'll make things worse for you, for your God too. He did it for the Israelites wandering through the desert, right? He fed them manna. He was able to do it at one point. Now he can't.
You think there's a reason why he isn't doing that now because of what happened to those people?
What happened to them? They're the Israelites. They're his people. They're his chosen people. He started doing it and he stopped doing it. And again, we've already agreed that if you have the ability to feed starving children at the snap of your fingers and you don't do it, you're an immoral monster. So you can't get around this little fact, right?
Us to do it though. But he's giving us the ability to do that. We're feeding starving children right now. We're becoming more.
Kites. If I could let's focus on me. If I could snap my fingers right now and end all the hunger in the world, if I could do that, and I came up to you and said I could do it, I could totally do it, but I'm not gonna. Would you think that I'm a moral monster or an immoral monster?
So 1,000 years is just a second for him, right?
Bro, I'm just asking you a simple question. Would I be an immoral monster?
Right now, I believe that the world is going to become much better.
Kites. I'm not asking about the rest of the world. Kites. I feel like you're desperately not wanting to answer this. Would you call me an immoral monster if I said I could?
Yes, it would make him, in a way, immoral.
Okay, great.
In the same
awesome.
Heaven exists.
Great, but then how are we not getting a contradiction if you think God is all good, right? Like I'm not understanding like your train of reasoning here.
I don't believe in a truly good or evil God. I don't believe in absolute terms. I believe that that the greatness of mankind it relies in the silver lining of it all. And right now we're in that silver lining as we're talking right now. Both me and you, I'm sure we both done good things on this earth, right? And we are striving for that utopia right now, right?
Okay, that's fine. Then shave off all the extra commitments. If we're both looking at the world and we're doing good stuff and we're helping the world, what is this extra like foreign metaphysical baggage? Why are we adding all of this extra like work on top of it? Like you're paying really high philosophical costs and then telling me like, but look, we have this utility and we go out in the world and we help people. Okay, well, I just shave all that other stuff you're talking about off and I still get the same thing done. It's not adding any explanatory power. It's like an idle wheel. It doesn't do anything. Right? Like, why don't we add like 20 more God concepts on top of the one you have and then add like more spirit realms? It seems like I don't want to say irrational, but it seems like paying the cost for these additional things in your theory just end up having no explanatory like scope or breadth and depth. They're just kind of additional purchases, right? It's like you're buying something and then never using it. So if we're in agreement there, then why? I don't understand. Then help me get on board with this extra stuff. I just don't understand it.
So what do you have to say to my previous point about, what if heaven exists and those children are
all right, Kites, I'm sorry, but I got to drop you. If you can't answer just like questions, it's not going to be productive. It
will be productive if you're not answering my question though.
like I this is no hard feelings to you, Kites. I'm going to move on to other callers. It seems like we're just jumping in 12 different spaces, and it's really hard to like keep track of the point. So I don't know, Jim, if you have call in studio, but mine like won't let me actually drop the call for some reason. So
there we go. I hit the drop button and drop call. There we go.
Awesome.
But to answer his question about heaven, if we assume heaven exists, then starving the child to death so they can get to heaven doesn't get you out of being a moral monster. It just doesn't, because the ends do not justify the means. So.
All right. We got some more super chats. We got Dark Wolfie again. Yeah, it's three. I had to scroll up and read. Dark Wolfie Games, $5 because Lee said I could. Because Lee said I couldn't, and because JMike said my free will would allow me to. I need to like get glasses or something. I'm really, really struggling today reading. Like even in the
have glasses, it's not helping.
In the pre-production stuff, it was like Matt's like, "Hey, just read me a little, give your best podcast voice," and I'm like, oh, okay, Anyway, Rainbow Wolf, $5. No evidence for God is good enough for non-believers. Oh, I'm sorry. Lord, kill me now. Give me the power to read, please. I beg you. All right, I'm going to try this again, Jim. I'm going to try this again. And then I'm going to pass it off to you because brain not on today. No evidence for God is good enough for non-believers is what apologists say when their evidence sucks, if they even have evidence to begin with. And I'll let you finish it out, Jim, because and thank you, Rainbow Wolf, because we're going to go on longer if I keep reading them.
Okay. Grumpy Butterfly, who's a new member, gave us $5. Thank you so much. Donning my tinfoil hat to tell you about a city on Uranus. I did my research. That's not a city. That's my doctor's giving me something for it. K-Dog, $4.99. Hello, atheist from Alabama. Hello, I'm also in Alabama. I have a fun thought experiment for you. If God is eternal, what was he doing for the many years before he created us? How do you know it was years? Because a year is how long it takes the Earth to rotate around the sun, and if the Earth didn't anyway.
Yeah, but you could God, he knows the future, so it's all good. You just take that information and just apply it to the duration. I mean, I guess there's no amount of years, because if it's before time, I mean, I don't know. Like, I talked to there's a Christian philosopher I really enjoy talking with. That I got to talk with in different forums, named Ryan Mullins, who he thinks that God is like within time, or he's like one of the very few people that don't have this like God is outside of time thing, and he's just like, it's nonsense. It's like doesn't make any sense, and I'm like, a theist finally gets it. Like we can make some progress finally, because I can actually understand what you're saying. Maybe but
right.
Yeah,
because we don't know how to talk about things that don't exist in this universe existing outside of the universe, right?
Yeah, I don't know how to divorce.
What does it mean to be eternal if there's no time?
Yeah, I don't know what a before is in that point, I just take like verbs like creating to be temporal notions, but I don't know, just me. Call me crazy, call me weird and wild. I think
we got two more of these.
Two more, okay.
Yep. Miranda Rensberger, who's a member for a month, gave us $5. Thank you so much. Why would scientists want to keep a city on Mars named Mars secret? Most would love to have the names published on such a paper if evidence were compelling. Yeah. I agree. That's why I was pointing out the biggest problem with asking a scientist a question is not having enough time for the answer. They just won't. They love what they do. They love to talk about it.
Trust me, hanging out with Forrest was like look at this leaf, and did you know that this here is responsible like 12 million years ago for this and that? I'm like, what? You know, it's happening right now.
Right.
I didn't pay for any classes.
Not all as animated as Forrest, but they all are. Yeah.
That's great. I love it.
Quantum Answer, who's been a member for 2 years, gifted 10 the Atheist Experience memberships. Thank you so much, Quantum Answer.
Lot. Thank you.
The real question is was that a wave or a particle? Anyway.
Yeah, that's all your stuff right there. All right.
And also, I would like this. We talk about Justin in emails. I have an email. I'm not going to read all of it because, quite frankly, there's not enough rum in the universe. But I'll read the second part of this.
Sure.
He top posts his email, so this is like the third response. Anyway, I'm just interested in your opinion. Emmanuel said that there is no God. He was teaching about the power of the Spirit. The Spirit incarnates on the 21st day after conception. That is when the heart starts beating. Spirit, being of creative energy and creation itself, the all-becoming, all-creative, and all-stimulating. Spirit energy equals spirit form equals immortal, also known as spirit body equals astral form equals astral body. The spirit is an idea itself, concentrated to spiritual energy in itself. Doris Berther, I'm going to stop there. I think I've caused enough brains to go boom.
Yeah, I think of that like 90s meme of the kid at the computer. It turns around, he's like, that's like all I could do to that. So.
That was just the first paragraph. The next paragraph should probably be like 3 and is another 30 or 40 lines long. That was just the first 3 lines.
So we got different flavors of email. I had some really awesome emails, and then you had like
yeah. There's an email I sometimes want to dig out, but it's for somebody who can't be mentioned anymore, so I'm not going to do it. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff Justin deals with and tries to make some sense out of, and then kicks it to us hosts sometimes. That one actually only made it to me because I was asking Justin for them. Otherwise, we would never have seen it. So we don't get the truly crazy stuff. So as I get more of those, I'll read them out if people are interested in hearing some of these folks.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I'm not going to give any details as to who it was. I'm not going to tell you when it was sent or anything like that. But anyway.
For sure. Yeah. Let's try to get a few more in. I know we got a bunch more theists that called in, so we'll try to go from the top here. We got Chloe from Michigan. Pronouns are she, her. Wants to weigh in on the chat poll question, which, if I have correctly, it was, should atheists be able to question God, right? So how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing okay. How are you?
Doing really good.
Can you hear? Oh, I shouldn't. Yeah, I'm supposed to ask that. Sorry.
You're okay. Hey, it's okay. You get one. Everybody gets one, and then no more. You're cut off. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, so I've sort of been just kind of wanting to, just hop on here. It's my first time doing this on YouTube Live, and recently in the past year or so, I've been making more connections and friends in the atheist community, and it's been giving me a lot to think about. And there's just been a lot of stuff that's been really interesting. And so when I was asked like what topic, I didn't have just one in particular. I'm kind of interested in both engaging with the questions that you posed in the survey and a little bit of feedback on one of the previous callers, and then just sort of having a conversational adventure kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds fine. What do you want to start with?
Well, I think the easiest place for me to start in with, apart from saying I have horrible ADHD right now, even with meds because of a lot of stress I'm going through at the moment, so forgive me. But that being said, the easiest place for me to get into was a previous caller who is kind of trying to talk through sharing some stories about like personal loss and certain, different things between like their real life events and like dreams and things like that kind of spoke to them. And so something I've been learning a lot from conversations with my friend Fern, who I think is in the live chat, is that I've been piecing together and realizing that there's a lot of communication issues that I think that we Christians have in how we understand things and communicate things, and how that can like lead to some messy conversations. And Fern has really challenged me quite a bit about to really think more deeply. And I really and I love that, because I'm always trying to understand things better. And so what I first wanted to say is that, like, on the one hand, I empathize and get with the previous caller. Well, not the previous, probably the one before that was, coming from, because I know what it's like when you have these admittedly subjective experiences that really speak to you. But then also, while you can share that story, a subjective experience can't, of course, it can't like just be something that would just compel somebody else, to believe per se. It's, we can.
Yeah, because it's first person, it's a revelation is going to be first person experience, assuming that those things happen, right?
Yeah. And, I've had those kinds of things as well, and they've been meaningful to me. But then, I also, I've noticed that a lot of from the bits of the shows that I've heard where theists call in and whatnot, I've noticed kind of a pattern where on the shows there's a lot of bumbling and struggling to like communicate clearly and be able to answer certain questions. And then if it's like on social media and it's just online, some of the same, I think types of people or similar, like they can just be real assholes, just really bullying and like trying to shove a certain kind of certainty judgmentally. And something that's brewing in my head.
On which part, Chloe? Like, you're saying who's on the theist part or the atheist part? I'm missing some information.
That's okay. What's your full question?
Well, maybe you want to continue. I wasn't understanding who you were referring to, and you were saying that they were like a lot of bashing and things like that. I didn't know who you were referring to.
Oh, and in terms of the bashing, I actually am saying that the theists and Christians have been doing the bashing.
Okay, that's what I want to understand. Okay.
It's just like, this is just absolute fact, and if you don't believe it and if you don't accept it, then XYZ. And I've been having this slow wake up to like how much of like just the huge majority of Christendom, and the church religion is like the behavior is awful. And even though I have critiques about like behavior and also about like how much people have or haven't thought about the answers that they want to give, I've also been having to confront ways in which I've been raised and conditioned based on the bubble I was raised in, so that I can only give answers that go so far. And I'm not also prepared for certain kinds of questions. But because I love to learn, that's been, stimulating a lot of curiosity and reviving a lot of desire to learn. And I sort of want to put this out there both to like affirm something that I really appreciate about the atheist community, and also to critique something in the theist world, that like something I just really appreciate is that, as I've been getting to know more of you better, like there's just this real genuine desire for truth, for a really thorough conversation, to just really think about things and to seek really deep, comprehensive answers. And also, and then to kind of, I really appreciate that, because I mean, that's just loving the truth,
Yeah. Can I answer it in right here? Well, I wanted to thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I'm going to insert it in just like a little 2 cents. That way we can get a little back and forth. I'm very appreciative of that, by the way. I mean, I see good people that believe in all sorts of stuff. I see bad people that believe in very similar things that I believe in, right? Now, I think that religious beliefs and things like that have way more of an impact on informing somebody's beliefs. Or if you're like very skeptical of science, it's going to inform your beliefs when we go through some pandemic. And like, I'm not getting a vaccine. I have a theory that a lot of those people are people that didn't want to like get vaccines as a kid. They're like scared of needles, but I don't know if that's a an accurate hypothesis or not. But I guess like all of that's fine. You know, I think that you can look at the people and say people do really shitty things. People do really good things. Some Christians make other Christians look bad. Some atheists make other atheists look bad. A lot of that meta stuff, I want to be honest with you, is not as important to me unless it comes down to how it like somebody's actions, how the beliefs inform their actions, and how they go out and, you know, harm somebody or do something that indirectly harms somebody. What I really care about is just the content that we're expressing and whether or not it's true. And so I don't want to like flip this on you because you said something like, you know, you said you weren't prepared to answer a lot of these questions, but I am curious, and maybe this is, you just tell me straightforwardly if this is not your concern of the call. I'm interested in why you believe and how you maintain your belief, because I'm not a believer and I've never believed in Christianity or God. So it fascinates me, and I want to know from the caller's point of view, like, why?
Well, first of all, I want to say, don't feel bad about asking me anything, whether I feel like I'm prepared or not, because I always think questions are interesting. And if I'm not prepared to answer something, it's at least going to stimulate my brain, and I'll be like, that's fascinating. I need to work on that. But anyway, so having said that, as to like how or why I believe and how I maintain it, is that like what you were asking? Like, say it to me one more time.
Yeah, like what you know, it says you're a theist, so I assume you believe the proposition God exists, but like maybe you want to say more specifically, I believe in Jesus, or Jesus died for our sins, and the reason I believe that is because of, and then what I'm looking for is like reasons that raise the probability, not like it makes me feel good or like, you know, things like that, like utility aspects. Right. Yeah.
Right. Well, you know, it's, you know, I think this is like a core question that pops up all over the place. And ironically, at this point in my life, I've been going through a lot of deconstruction, a lot of kind of coping with betrayal trauma. And it has made a lot of things fall away that, if not for my experiential relationship with God, I would be an atheist. And then I know that as soon as I say that the whole phrase experiential relationship with God, that there are all these critiques that come up that have to do with like, well, I mean, sometimes we can hallucinate, sometimes we can like fool ourselves, and it's feelings, and like, how do you know? And you know, as I've, you know, Fern's been teaching me a lot about all these questions and these other standpoints. And the thing is, when Fern also says that, like, but me as a Christian, that I believe in crazy magic shit. So from that lens and through that lens of, you know, believing in that, even though there's all this stuff in the Bible that raises very good questions about whether or not God is good and whether or not God is love, from the paradigm of my crazy magic shit of believing that God is love and that love is at the center, you know, love is something that science can study, but love is not something that we, I think, ever think that science is what validates. And so there are all sorts of answers and stories I could tell you that could tell you like how and why. I can tell you how like my inner experience of God is different than other feelings. And
well, maybe I should be more specific. What got you to believe in the first place? Or was there a pivotal moment? Were you born into it, or?
I was I was born and raised for sure at first. Yep, I was born and raised.
Sure. And so if you think that you were raised, I mean, this is a very kind of cliche, memey response I'm about to give you, but I think it's very, like, it should be concerning for people in this situation. If you were born in another like country, like, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, do you think that you'd be a practicing Muslim?
Entirely possible.
Do we think that that's a good reason to believe, though? That's what I'm concerned about.
Well, I actually don't. I actually don't think that that's a good reason, but that's the beginning of like my honest answer of how I got this way. And
Sure.
over time,
Okay.
Wounding after wounding, betrayal and such, like basically most of my biggest harms are actually from within the Christian community. And so, from other Christians. And so, if anything, because of how life experiences that are too complex for me to go into right now have just destroyed just tons of my trust in the bubble I was raised in and other institutions and structures, the thing that still holds is this experience. And I've been through so much trauma that has affected my ability to feel and to function, that at least for me, also speaks to like how it's not just feelings, because if you know anything about trauma, you know that trauma really fucks with your ability to feel, and it also really fucks with your ability to like,
Well,
Can
Can I ask you this question? Can I ask you a question real quick? You said earlier that God is love. If God exists and loves you, why did he allow you to have this trauma?
Well, I'm going to give you my honest answer. It is probably going to sound a bit long-winded, but I'm actually not trying to dodge your question. I just want to say that first, okay?
Okay.
I don't think we view you as dishonest, Chloe. You seem to be, you seem to be honest. You just sounds like you got a lot in your head and you want to say, and that's perfectly fine.
I do. I mean, for so long, I've always tried to like avoid the thing of like being too much, but finally I'm just like, I'm Chloe and I'm a lot. My brain is almost too much for me sometimes. So you ask me if I believe that God is love, why did God allow me to go through all these things? And so I'm somebody who believes that I believe in a literal Satan. I believe in a time before there was sin and evil. And I believe in the impact that sin had afterwards, and also that there's the complicating factor of free will. And based on, things that I've looked at and examined and just kind of poured over for myself, love is not really love without the freedom to say no, and that freedom is really risky. And then, because, if there's no freedom to say no, it's not really love, it's abuse, however sophisticated and medicated and pleasurable.
You weren't the one saying no.
Not really.
Chloe, you weren't the one saying no, right? You weren't saying no to God when you had the trauma experiences or the trauma-causing experiences, correct?
Right. Wait,
so that doesn't really answer the question. That doesn't really answer the question.
I know. I'm working to it. I know.
It answers the question.
I promise I'm working to it.
No, it's not long. I'm just not following you, because the people saying no were the ones causing the trauma. You could make that case, and maybe you are. But I'm asking, why did God allow you to experience the trauma? You're not the one who said no.
Well, this is at least a question that challenges me to want to come up with a faster answer than what I'm coming up with right now. But I can picture it, but give me a second, because basically the way that I look at this and have come to understand it is that it's like a complex math problem, and there's a certain factor, that free will is and that it impacts. And so while yes, God has allowed me to go through certain things, and God allows things that I do not understand. I mean, the stuff I've gone through will seem like 2 bits compared to just other stories that I know, and all kinds of stories of human suffering in the world. And coexisting with that, I also look and believe that Jesus on the cross entered into full solidarity with all of our suffering, and that doesn't make it right, but that he went into like every moment of like, whether it's like a current thing of suffering or a flashback to it, all of that.
Okay.
He entered
Well, let me
into
see if I can
solidarity with.
summarize. Let me see if I can shorten what you're saying. You deserve the trauma. Is that what you're saying?
Actually, no. Actually, no.
Because it sounds like you're making an excuse for a loving God to allow you to experience trauma. And I'm wondering, what's the excuse?
I get that. And this is, again, why I actually really like having these conversations, even if I don't have the greatest answer at first, is because these questions, it makes me want to write stuff down and think more and try to distill things better, because I don't, how do I say this? He suffers with me. And he suffers even more than I do. And there is...
So what?
Perfect being
It's
suffer.
completely irrelevant to your suffering.
Huh?
That's completely irrelevant. I mean, you're basically saying that you're suffering so God can suffer, right? Because I'm assuming you believe in the omni-God, right?
I believe in what?
The omni-God?
You're assuming that I believe in...
The omni-God, omnibenevolent, omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent.
Yeah,
that
omnipotent,
God.
omniscient, got you.
Yeah.
So you are, I'm fine with you interrupting wherever. Sometimes it feels like you're, and I'm not trying to like whine here. You are sometimes asking me questions before I've totally gotten the thought out. But I'm not trying to like whine like, oh, you won't listen or whatever, nothing like that.
Yeah.
I think that free will is a complicator that, if free will isn't like the same across the board for everybody, like then it's not like just, it's not like free will being the same for everybody and respect to free will being the same for everybody. It leads to variables and complications, and I don't have all the answers for that. But what I do know, is that understanding and seeing how God suffers with me, and that there's a way in which it's just like everybody's got to have freedom to mess up or do well. And it's not right. It's not fair that any of us suffer. And I wanted to say that right there. I don't think that there's like a justification or something rational about suffering. And I don't think that God is happy.
So why does God allow it?
Or feels good about, huh?
Why does God allow it?
I'm going to say, okay, so I'm going to say free will. And then of course I know that like, that's something that I can't flesh out better right now, but that's my fastest answer. And,
okay. Well, let me try a different approach, and maybe we can get it. Yeah, well, let me try a different approach. We're going to stay on the same topic.
Sure.
Are you a parent?
I'm a godmother.
Are you a
I'm very
parent?
dedicated godmother.
Okay. So let's say there's a parent out there who intentionally allows their child to touch a hot stove. Is that a good parent?
Mm. The easy, obvious answer would be no.
Okay. So why is it no?
Because love is supposed to be protective. And love is supposed to be anti-harm.
Yeah. Right. And you can teach a child not to touch hot stove without burning themselves, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then,
do you think there's a parent out there that would stop their child from having heartache if they could?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I know that very well.
Is there is it a good parent or a bad parent that will step in front of a bullet for their child?
A good parent.
Yeah. And if they allow their child to suffer and they can suffer along with them, is that a good parent or a bad parent?
Well, when you phrase it that way, absolutely a bad parent. I don't believe that God allows us to suffer so that he can suffer with us. But something else that I do know about parenting, because even though I don't have blood children, I've been kind of a 24/7 helping raise my godchildren. And what I can say is that we can pour ourselves and do our damnedest into loving and shaping and protecting kids. And then sometimes there are factors outside of our control. And here I know there's comes the, if he's, well, then what if is he omnipotent? I know, but like there are factors that can be outside of our control that in spite of everything that we would love and want to do, they prevent us to be able to do certain things. And then I know that having said that, it launches right into like, well, then how can he be all powerful?
Exactly. That would be how is he omnipotent? Right? Because there are no factors out of an omnipotent being's control.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out too, I'm going to cut it here after this, but I want to point this out because you talked about the relationship. I pulled up something that just talks about signs that you're in a toxic relationship. And then I'm just going to list these things and you can just silently, I don't know, agree or disagree or whatever and take away with this. But I think that this highlights the relationship that a lot of religious people tell me. All take, no give, feeling drained, lack of trust, hostile atmosphere, occupied with imbalance, constant judgment, persistent unreliability, nonstop narcissism, loaded with negative energy, lack of communication, continuous disrespect, avoidance, insufficient support, ceaseless control issues, constant challenges, persistent self-betrayal, never-ending drama, feelings of unworthiness, vibes of entrapment. I could go on, but I think when I pull up, like I do this a lot when I talk with people about the relationship, and I'll just Google signs that you're in a toxic relationship. And it almost, I'm not saying that necessarily you've said this because I don't know your entire experience. You know, maybe you just look at that and go, that's not my God. That's nothing like my God. But I have had these conversations and it's almost like I'm reading, like the person that wrote that article was talking about this specific character, like to a T.
Sure.
Like they were just describing that person.
Yeah.
And so I don't want you to just, you know, I agree with you, JMike. You know, obviously we have different views, but I don't know. I would say like, think about that. And then maybe you just go, JMike's completely crazy. That has nothing to do with it. But I don't know. I think that's something to consider when you call it a relationship, because the relationships I have, they're gifts. They're given to me. I didn't really even ask for them. They were just kind of handed to me, like whether it's, you know, everybody at the ACA or my friends around me in my area. A lot of this it's like gifted to me. And I don't have any of this. When I go through that list, I don't see, you know, the ACA or my friends or my family falling victim of any one of these things. And that's like, it's good. That makes me think that's a good relationship. But if I had saw a couple of things on there, it's getting a little toxic quick. I start seeing most of those things on there, but I am going to move on. I hate to cut it short, Chloe. I'd like you to call back when I'm on again. You seem like you're in the pursuit of truth as well. You know, so I think we're on the same team in that sense, right? We just have different conclusions.
Yeah. Is it okay if I say one more short thing?
Sure.
Or do you want to end things now?
Yeah, you go ahead if it's really short. I want to try to get to one last call. I think it'll be short. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This I'll say. The list about the toxic relationship features, I completely get where you're coming from and where everything looks like that. And the one thing I want to say, you know, before we end this is that under the premise that there's a being who is literally, you know, according to my crazy magic shit, believing in an infinite God who's bigger than I can comprehend, there are human relationships that are more fully comprehensible by us. And then we can look at a relationship between a human and a supernatural God, and there isn't going to be a perfect parallel. There are valid points that are raised that look very similar. And then also, like, it's just not the same components if you're trying to navigate and understand between a finite being and an infinite being. And so that's just kind of the last thought that I had, and I really appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, and I would add finite. I would add, if we make that distinction, finite fathers are apparently much better than infinite fathers. So, because they actually provide the love, care, and stop suffering when they have the ability to do that. So.
Some of them do, because some of them do. Not all of them do.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we know infinite fathers don't do it. So. But all right, thank you, Chloe. We appreciate the call.
Chloe. Do call in.
Yep. Yeah. All right, we're gonna do this one real quick. I think this one is be really simple, unless maybe it's just a different consideration. We're gonna go to Baked Alaska in New York. Wants to talk about tag the transcendental argument for God. Go.
Yeah. So just to pick up, maybe I could provide some continuity with the last caller.
Well, I just want to know what I just want the transcendental argument for God.
The transcendental argument is God is a necessary precondition for knowledge claim.
Great. Yep.
And so.
Okay.
And so.
I don't know that I accept that hold on. Real quick. I'm familiar with the argument. I wanted you just to say that first premise. Right. So that's the reason why I had you come on, was for this premise. You do realize that if you present an atheist with the first premise of this argument, God is the necessary precondition for knowledge, not a single atheist would accept that because they don't believe in God. So it assumes the falsity of their view. So what you're going to have to do now, and this is why I brought you on, was that for this specific thing, I want you to take that first premise that God is the necessary precondition for knowledge, put that as the conclusion of a new argument, and give me premises that lead to that conclusion, because I don't accept the first premise. So that's the only thing that I'd like you to do.
Okay. So the only way I could do that on the fly is I would reformulate the argument in the form of modus tollens.
So you don't have support for the first premise of an argument that you're giving? When I give arguments, I have like 3 or 4 supporting arguments for the premises. Like, look at William Lane Craig. Craig gives look at Craig. Look at Daddy Craig, right? He gives everything that begins to exist as a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe had a cause. But he doesn't just roll that out, right? He gives arguments why there can't be actual infinites, why there can't be things that begin to exist, right? Because then things could just pop in from the nothing void or whatever. So he gives additional arguments, like, it's not the case that there are actual infinities or whatever. I
may have misunderstood. Mike, I may have misunderstood you. I thought you said not to present the argument with that first premise.
I asked you to make what's called a supplemental argument that takes the first premise that I don't accept, that no atheist would ever accept, that God is the precondition. Look, not a single atheist would go, yeah, I think God is the precondition for knowledge. Yep, I accept premise 1. Every atheist would go, yeah, I'm not convinced by that premise, or I straightforwardly think that premise is false. And so what you're going to have to do, what's required of you in the dialectic, is to present a new argument where that premise is now the conclusion of a new argument. So that way we can get from statements that reason our way to that statement, so that we can travel back to the first argument, right? This is why I wanted to bring you on, because I fucking hate presuppositionalism. I fucking hate it. And I wanted you to come up so I can exploit what no presuppositionalist can do, which is give a supporting argument for the first premise. So I'm going to mute, and you're going to give me you're going to give me the premises, or you're going to concede I don't have that argument, which is I have a hypothesis that not a single presuppositionalist has that argument.
So I would have to present a different argument, because what you're saying is why.
And you don't have that argument?
And
you don't have that argument?
Well, I mean, essentially, the reasoning is all the same, right? I mean, essentially.
It's not. Do you have the argument or do you not?
Yes, it's essentially the same argument.
Okay, what's the first premise?
I mean, I don't.
Stop wasting my time. What's the first premise?
That the regularity of nature is necessary to form knowledge claims.
Wait, but you said God was necessary for knowledge claims.
right? But then but you won't accept that. So I'm going to start with something that you will accept, and then we'll work our way backwards to how that has to be grounded in God.
Okay, so what was the first premise again?
What else you want me to do?
Well, I want you to come prepared with. Look, it's very clear that you're making up premises now. Like you don't. Like, just be honest with me. Is the argument that the supplemental argument that you're giving me now? Is it written down anywhere, or just be honest? Or are you just literally saying it now off the top of your head? Just be honest. Okay.
It's the latter. I'm making.
Okay. So you didn't have the. So you.
But
Okay. So the only reason. Dropping the call. The only reason I brought you up here was not for you to actually like go through the dialectic. You can call back next time we have more time. Only reason I wanted you to come up here was because I knew that you didn't have another argument to support the first premise, because no presuppositionalist does. And when they do, it's a question begging argument. So please call in, write it down. Don't just make stuff up on the spot, because one, the argument's going to be formally invalid. If you just start stringing together random sentences, thinking that you're using valid inference rules, like the coincidence that you end up using those inference rules correctly, pretty low, right? Unless you're just using like if-then statements. So call back when you actually have taken the time to written an argument, and not just like, shit, I got to come up with something right now. But all right, Jim, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, given how long the transcendental argument's been around, and that this is a fairly common response to it, what do you think the odds of this guy coming up with a argument that philosophers haven't since Kant? Kant was the first to propose it.
Well, there's you got like Cornelius Van Til and Greg Bahnsen and Clark. I can't remember his name. It was like the main presuppositional apologist, but all their work, in my humble opinion, is trash, garbage. I couldn't get through like majority of Van Til when I tried.
Well, because you're assuming God exists at the outset, right?
Yeah,
by saying that God is the foundation of knowledge. You're assuming he exists based on what? Like, I know you disagree with this, but I'll make the argument that the laws of logic aren't presuppositions. They're based on what we observe, and we admit that they could be wrong. Ship a Theseus problem, it's for identity, etc.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm not sure my view on that. By the way,
we got to change everything. Pardon?
I'm not sure my view on that. I've in the past held them as presuppositions, but I actually think that could be a mistake, depending on how you use the language. So, but I don't know that like those conversations aren't really that like interesting to me. It might be for other people. Like you want to get super into the weeds on that stuff. I'm like, I'll just kind of throw my hands up, at that point.
Yeah, and I could just point to the fact that we can observe that the laws of logic follow. Right, we can see that. We can answer the ship of Theseus problem by it's still the ship of Theseus, because we still have the idea of it as a unique thing, right? It has a unique identifier in programming speak. Even though everything about it has changed, the identifier hasn't. What we think of as the ship of Theseus hasn't, right? You can also look at it as the ship of the Enterprise. Is the Enterprise still the Enterprise from the first episodes all the way out to DE, whatever else they've got out there? Mm-hmm. They're very different ships, but the stories are the same, and the central things about the ship, the Enterprise, are still the same. So I think the law of identity still holds, but that would be the way to attack it, and disprove it is something along those lines. So I don't I don't have to presuppose the laws of logic, so I don't know why we have to presuppose anything.
Well, one thing that's important in these conversations is that you don't have to like die on any hill for any position. Like, I don't have to explain I'm a naturalist to some presuppositionalist when the claim on the table is God is the necessary precondition for knowledge. Like, we could just assume a couple things. One, we could just say I'm a really bad representation of a naturalist. Like, I haven't really done, the extensive kind of work and understanding the view and figured out all the potholes, and I'm just a bad representation. And so if somebody just in that dialectic just shows me that my view is like incoherent or something, one, I just might not be representing the actual view very well. Two, that says nothing about naturalism as a whole because, or other views, because there's wide different, disputes within those domains, right? Like in-house kind of disputes. But more importantly, it's like you're telling me that, only this TV gets the football channel today, and that you can only watch it at my house. It's the precondition that we can watch, football at my house. And then you want to focus like, does your TV have the, the big game on? And I'm like, wait, hold on. Me and Jim are here, and you told us that only your TV can produce these images, like no other TV in the world can. Okay, why do you want to fucking waste time coming to my apartment? It's broken. Let me just tell you, it's broken. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Right? My worldview sucks. How about that? Yeah. Get to the part where you prove that God is the necessary precondition for knowledge. That sounds fucking it's like fascinating as shit. But you get nothing. You don't get any supplemental argument. You get nothing. So I'm going long-winded. But if you haven't told, I despise presuppositional apologetics. So.
I do too. I do.
Yeah, they're my favorite to talk to though, because they're so fun.
I usually like to reply, I presuppose I'm God.
Yeah, I smoked the bull in the woods. I smoked the bull in the woods, therefore naturalism is true. The trees revealed it to me. It was just like, God doesn't exist. I just felt these brain, these mental events that are natural mental events that just came into my natural brain. And that's what it revealed to me. Just a reminder for everybody, the prompt this week is complete the sentence. I was crucified and sent to hell, and all I got was blank. Maybe you got a, presuppositionalist t-shirt or something. I don't know. But give us your comments and let us know. Maybe someone can come up some juicy with that one in presuppositionalism. I might be forced, but if you could do it for me, I'll tip my cap to you when I watch the show next week. I do want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank the crew. Let's get the crew back up on the. I can't even think of words today. The screen. I was going to say the board. Let's get them on the board. There's no board. Thank you guys so much. And also a reminder to everybody that if you want to support us, you can support us by going to tiny.cc/AEN podcast for our podcasts. You can send us a super chat, as many people have, which I think we did get one more. So I do want to say this last super chat. Speaking of, Jonathan France, $4.99, sent $5 just to say that Jim is his. I shouldn't have read this. What did I do? Jim is his favorite host, but I'm I think he's doing like JMike, but with a JM. Yeah. There we go. JM and JMike make a great team. Well, thank you. I should have never read that. I'm supposed to be everybody's favorite. God, no, I'm just kidding. And we also have the limited t-shirts at tiny.cc/merchaca. And thank you, everybody. Jim, do you want to sign it off or anything that you want to say?
No, I would like to respond to the caller we let go, where he was asking if we thought atheists were like global deniers. And he said, do you agree or disagree? No, we're not like global deniers. We're not like flat earthers in any way. So there's your answer.
I read that and I was like, I don't know if they're talking about global skeptics, like somebody's skeptic about everything, or like like actual like flat. Okay, so I was seeing the same thing you were saying. Yeah.
But he asked the yes or no question, so we don't even have to take his call.
Yep. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and make sure you tune in at 4:30 Central for next week. We love you. Peace.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.